So welcome to the it's September now, the 3rd of September Aries-vcx community call. This is a Hyperledger and Linux Foundation call, so note the antitrust policy and the code of conduct. So make sure we're treating each other with respect. In terms of announcements, I don't think we have anything new here other than maybe I should put this up here in the announcements as well. We have a proposal to move Aries-vcx to the Open Wallet Foundation. This goes in hand with the move with ACBI to the Open Wallet Foundation. We'll talk about more of that in the agenda, and it's also, I guess I can say this for the people who are going to watch the recording potentially as well. So because I'm like, you guys know this. In terms of recent work done and work in progress, Alberto, you have your PR that you submitted for the iOS project, as well as some of the general script bindings and stuff. So we need to review that and whatnot. Is there any thing that you wanted to discuss on that topic?
On that particular topic, no, not on that topic. But maybe if we can discuss a little bit, just maybe very briefly. And I know it's not a popular subject, but new deals. I just want to get your guys' opinion on a few things and maybe see what you guys think what we have so far. I'll show something.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
Any other things that should be on today's agenda that are not on the agenda already?
I don't have anything there.
Sweet. Let's jump into the agenda in full then. Proposal to move Aries-vcx to the Open Wallet Foundation. So far, I have not received any feedback in terms of any objections, and we have a couple of thumbs up here, as well as thumbs up in the Discord channels. So far, I have not received any objections, mostly support in favor of the move or neutral position on it. Because I could see that there's individuals who aren't even aware of what Aries-vcx is are likely to have less of an opinion there. So far, haven't received any negative feedback. I think that I think creating this proposal is really good so that there's the opportunity for feedback to be raised. I think that we should keep this open for another, I would think, at least week to two before we move forward with a concrete proposal to the Open Wallet Foundation, or apply, I should say. And I think that also gives us ideally the time to get the first iteration of the framework out and ready, so that will address our timing question. That's my current thought, is so maybe we have this be open for another until the next VCX call, and then we say we're closing it and we're going to actually officially apply at that point.
Yeah,
Thoughts?
that sounds good to me.
Awesome.
Yeah, and I just realized as well, it seems like Sean's time zone is Central European, so it's like midnight right now. So we might need to try coordinate a different time if we want to have a discussion with him.
That's a good point. I will reach out to him about potentially the next time, because I think his insights could potentially be useful. I think that one of the related things to this, slightly tangential, but in your you sent a Discord message, Alberto, regarding deployment tools for iOS and Android. And we could get those set up with Hyperledger, but one of my thoughts to bring up there is that I think it might be it could be wise or strategic of us to
Packages,
wait
we
until we go
package.
to the Open Wallet Foundation, you know?
Oh, okay, yes, yes, makes sense. Yeah, I figured the second option would just leave it as packages within GitHub.
That would also work. The other strategy, if we want to get like the CI configured and ready to go, it's just a which organization and permissions thing. You could set it up under a personal deployment. So like do a personal Swift package manager and a personal uh my brain is forgetting what the other one is called
Cocoa
off the
pods,
top of my head. They
cocoa pods,
I was thinking on the Android side, but
Gradle. Oh, Gradle, or
yeah,
Maven. Yeah,
Maven, that's the one I was thinking of. But that's one option. Or we could just wait to get those fully set up until we move to the Open Wallet Foundation. Um, that way we don't have to get Hyperledger to set up some stuff and then we just immediately move and abandon it.
right. I guess what we can do is maybe just set up like the pipeline itself and just leave that part out, just so it's later on easy to just connect whatever account.
Yep.
I'd have to take a look at that, how if that's even possible. I think it should. Um, but we'll leave like the skeleton ready at least. And on the fork repo that we have at Instant, we'll probably end up doing something under Instant to just continue to test. So we'll prove it's workable through the fork repo we have at Instant. So we should be able to prove that easily. And then whenever it's time, right, we can just plug that in.
I think that's good. Awesome. And I guess also the only other thing related to this that is a bit of an update from the Aries working group side of things is that we're where the other repos are moving and whatnot. The Aries Kotlin and Aries Swift are considering also making that move now. And the Aries RFCs looking to potentially just freeze the repo in place and move over the appropriate RFCs to the DICOM .org underneath the DICOM users group or working group. I'm not sure actually which one I was going to there, but move it to the diff. So that's a slight change in that we won't be moving that repo. We'll just be moving the appropriate RFCs out of it and leaving the older pieces. For instance, there's a good number of proposed or stalled RFCs that are no longer being pursued that don't need to be moved, for instance. So that's one update there.
Well, do they intend to sort of leave behind some of the older RFCs, like DidCom
I
one
think
based RFCs?
yes, in that, well, I expect they are going to move everything related to AIP2, but they don't want to move the most of the concept RFCs.
Yes, I see. Yeah.
So, especially since I think that it makes sense that those can still be accessed via the repository.
Mm.
But for instance, I think like DidCom or Did Exchange v2 uh, or like everything that we're using now, like Did Exchange, that would be being moved over because we may need to make clarifications or updates to those, and they're being actively used. But something like I think the idea is that we want to transition to DIGCOM v2 soon as well, so it doesn't make sense to move over the concepts that are somewhat outdated at this point.
Yeah.
Or are very DIGCOM v1 focused and would need some updates.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah, I think that's it for that discussion because we don't have any negative feedback. We've received only positive feedback, and there's nobody else who have attended today to discuss this move. So, yeah, I think that brings us to Alberto to talk about UDL, and he just dropped off.
Yeah. Yeah,
Alberto, I
thanks
think
for
that brings us
carrying that.
to.
I was going to say thanks for carrying that discussion thus far, James. It's been really good.
Oh yeah, yeah, definitely. I'm excited about the possibilities and to um it'd be really exciting to see our contributor and consumer base expand, and I think that this move has the strong likelihood of doing that.
For sure.
All right, Alberto, you want to talk about EDLs?
Yep, sure thing. Let me see here if I can. Let me see if I can just share my screen here. All right, share. All right, you guys see my screen here?
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah, so I guess the most difficult part so far with this project is stitching it all together, right? Going through some of the learning curves, with Unify RS has been challenging. We took routes with Pro Macros. We did, of course, some of the basic tutorials offered by the people at Mozilla with Unify. And of course, those were all successful to create bindings both for Swift and Kotlin. But once getting into the actual framework itself with this first iteration from James, we obviously encountered some more advanced, stuff within the actual Rust code, like async functions, right? The structs, the implementations, the interfaces, and how that all transpiles into kind of the UDL file itself. And of course, we tried moving to the Pro Macro solution to try to avoid the headache that the UDL file construction actually is. So we ended up kind of exploring some of the solutions within Mozilla. They have like this telemetry project, which uses a pretty advanced, very complete, UDL, and just seeing and mapping it out how they're using certain particular things within this file and how they're projected in the Rust, right? And kind of mapping how they're calling each, class or object or dictionary, whatever it may be, how they're using the traits, these functions, and kind of literally trying to test and just through trial and error, basically running the cargo run with the Unify and seeing whether or not it'll compile. Of course, the actual error it gives isn't always the best. So there's a lot of like literally just removing particular syntaxes with the UDL. But not until we kind of encountered one of these support tools called Unify-DL, and it's actually listed in the actual Unify RS repo, where you can install this on Android Studio and get like a sort of it's a good helper tool. I wouldn't say it's the best, but it does help a little bit. If I bring it up here, this is Android Studio. it helps kind of catch some of the syntax errors, even though you'll see here, like, for example, this is the UDL for that framework we're building, James. So basically here, this works as is. I'm in the middle of doing this part. So this works like this, basically, at this point in time. And we're obviously also following some of the documentation and on the actual Unified web page to kind of do this step by step. So as it is right now, I'm gonna bring up some of the code here. And I'll compare it this way. So this is the librs that you have here. And we set it up so that this crate has Unify implemented into it. And what we did is add, of course, the UDL file. And then after this, we obviously ignored all these import, right? Or these static variables not really needed. I figured you were trying to here test something in this actual framework, and I guess you opted out and went into actually using the sample agent. So all these statements kind of aren't really needed for the actual UDL file, but when it comes to this part, what it actually does. But the actual struct here of this framework config has some objects referencing it, right? So what we ended up seeing is we needed to call this AskCart wallet config as well as part of the UDL file. So for example, you could see here, and then obviously, for example, if I go back to this tool, it will start like complaining like, hey, what's key method, right? And I have to implement that interface over here and then explain what key method is. And then it complains about, okay, well, what's AskCart KDF method and so on, right? And actually implement the actual enum. So once getting into the actual code here, and we implemented this connection service as well, which is over here, right? Which is another struct, I believe, that's all the way over on this side, right? And so far, so good. And then there was a part here in the code where you're using like the endpoint, the agent endpoint, right? And this seems to be like a crate you're importing. And this here, well, I'm not sure how deep, and this is kind of where I get lost a bit. I don't know how deep the UDL file wants me to be, what the actual what needs to be referenced in these skeletons. But I ended up needing to kind of reference it this way. And I can always put this empty, right? Like this. And then it'll kind of run and it'll work. But I haven't actually ran and tested it from a Kotlin or Swift perspective. But I imagine it won't. But I'm not entirely sure. So so we're basically kind of taking it step by step, right? Kind of putting in the UDL file of each section here. And then hopefully at some point we'll be able to call like the actual framework itself and initialize it, right? So there isn't really a question here. I just wanted to share with you guys sort of the way we're doing it. But just want to get your thoughts if you guys think this is the right approach. It's not, I mean, there's obviously a lot of learning curves for us right now, but I think we've gotten better at it. So we're just trying to, right at this point, I just make it work as is. And I know, James, you probably have some upcoming PR soon, which will probably change this either a little bit or a lot, right?
Yeah.
But what do you guys think? Any thoughts or opinions?
One of my thoughts, which will be potentially a swing over towards George, but one of the things George had mentioned previously was being able to yeah, I have not messed with this and I have not looked into it, so I don't know if it's actually possible or not, but the possibility of mixing the proc macro with the UDL file, meaning taking a hybrid approach where rather than having to define everything, we use proc macros for the majority of things and then use the UDL where the proc macro can't be used. That's in particular for when we're importing something from a external crate that we can't define the proc macro on, such as potentially like the URL or like the ASCII pieces.
Mm-hmm.
If that's possible, that might cut down on some of the manual nature required, but still give us the ability to use the UDL file where the proc macros won't work in our case.
Right. Yeah, of course. Yeah, it's a good consideration. Yep.
Yeah, I think I agree. I think yeah, writing the UDL definitions, as you know, sucks a lot. And it's ideal to proc macro as many things as you can. But yeah, obviously you can't proc macro types that are coming from external places. Um, and you know you're starting to suffer a bit from that, having to try to define types for URL and for ASCII wallet config. Um, so yeah, for something like URL, it seems very hard to UDLify that. So I almost wonder if you'd have like some alternative, because this URL is being used in a config, is that right?
Yeah, it's part of the framework. That's when you're configuring the agent endpoint here.
Yeah. See, it's tough because like a quick fix would be to change that to a string instead of a URL, but then it's not, you know, not as neat because we want to be using typed URLs if possible. Um, which is where like ideas like having an extra thin layer on top for a unify specific consumption of the framework might be good. And you know, there's like a unify framework config, which is almost identical except uses strings for endpoints. Um, but then you got to
Mm.
maintain two different things, so that sucks as well. Um, just
Does
for sorry, I was just going to put this out for a specific example. I think they talk about URL and consuming URL in the Unify guide. Um, they have like some mechanism for writing a custom type for things like URLs, which I haven't really explored, but I'd be interesting to look at that.
Okay. No, that's good feedback, George. Yeah, I didn't think about that first part or considering like a second option, like a unified framework version of this.
Hmm.
All right, I
one
could take a look at the
question?
other option. Yeah.
Do you
Yeah, go
know
ahead,
off
James.
the top of your head, George, does Rust allow us to adjust? I'm guessing not. This seems like a little bit of a weird thing I'm considering, but could we adjust the whether or not a function or method, I should say, is public based off of a feature flag?
Ooh, um, I think so. If not, you could, you know, write it
Do
twice and
write it
have it.
twice.
Yeah,
Well, actually, you just have to have a higher level function
yeah,
one, and so have the lower level, the big function, be private, and then you have two just pointer functions essentially that point to it, or wrap it, if you will.
yeah,
The reason I think of that is because you could then have the methods defined for if you're doing unify or not.
mm,
Um, so you could require strings, for instance, instead of URL. Uh, it gets a
yeah,
little gross in that now, if you think about from like if we do testing, for instance, if we test with a URL and we do URL parsing and whatnot, there's more to test because there's more options available now for
yeah,
inputs.
yeah,
But
yeah, yeah.
if it can reduce or increase our maintainability of the project, I think it might be a worthwhile trade-off in at least some cases.
Yep. Yeah, definitely worth exploring that, I think. Yeah, I think it'd be doable.
Yeah, this option also looks viable.
Yeah, I think
Seems
they
like
talk about URL down the bottom as a specific example.
okay.
Maybe they have it in like the repo as one of their fixtures.
Mm-hmm. All right, I can take a look, see what I can.
Yeah, like you could look at this, but maybe you fix this, but then there's some other external type that is annoying as well, and it just turns into
Yeah,
a
so
bad.
that's why the hybrid, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like personally, the way we've done unified in our internal stuff at Anonymy, it's always been like, a core Rust layer, and we
Mm.
respect pure Rust stuff, use URLs and nice Rust types, and then a thin layer of the Unify version on top. Um, and that thin layer, it's a bit annoying because you have to redefine the interface, but you redefine the interface and it just calls into the core and you smack a proc macro on it. And if you have to create unify versions of certain types because they're ununifiable, such as if they're using a URL, um, then you just do that in the unify layer. But it is a bit annoying having to maintain two different things.
Yeah, I think that would be the major trade-off there, just maintaining two, because I guess the main, like you put it, right, what you're respecting as pure Rust, if you change anything into that, you have to go and change it on that thin layer, right?
Mhm.
Yeah, I guess also, for example, I would like to see what these guys at Matrix or even Mozilla, because as you can see here, these guys are using like these very like certain types, right, as well. And it seems to have been working with them, and I don't know if they're using that thin layer, but again, I haven't explored this project entirely, so I would have
Mm.
to do some digging. But I mean, I guess I would have to maybe evaluate that more. But if there's no other option around it, I guess maintaining two would be great until pro macros gets to a point where it can uh it can like do everything, right?
Yeah, yeah, it's good that you've got these examples. I hadn't seen this one, the Glean one. I'll need to have a look at it. That UDL file they have looks intense.
Yeah, that's why I kind of grabbed this one as kind of an example, right? But yeah, it's pretty robust. It's like about, what is it, like 500 lines? No, it's, yeah, 671 lines. So it does have some advanced stuff. So yeah, I have to take a look.
Yeah, see, I think they have like the custom types there on like line,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
right here.
Which I think is similar to what we were just seeing in the documents about custom URL
Hmm.
type. That.
Yeah, I guess again, if you're doing this from zero, you probably get the advantage of knowing what you're going to implement. So maybe they've known like that maybe it's worth doing a UDL approach, right? Because they know that they're only doing like maybe a small part of this as custom. I don't know,
Mhm.
right? I have to check it.
Do they have a unified.toml file in this project? Have you seen?
Yep, yep, they have it here.
Huh, okay. Not as
Yeah,
not as
if you're maybe talking about this, yeah, so they are pointing to that glean.udl,
Mm.
and yeah, and they're using, I guess, this lib as the main source.
Yeah. Yeah, okay. Yeah, I was expecting to see some of the custom type stuff, but I guess, yeah. I don't understand the custom type stuff really yet. I don't have
Yeah,
to
but
do
I
my
think it's a good option. It's a good option, and I can take a jab at it and see how it works for us.
Mhm. Yeah, it might be good.
Right.
Well, yeah, I don't think I really helped, but I
No,
relate
no,
to
no.
your
Yeah.
pain.
No, at least I get to bounce some ideas off in the meantime. But no, this is good.
Cool. And you definitely are you on Unify 0.28 up to the latest?
Yes,
Cool.
0.28, and yeah. No, I guess the big challenge is the syntax, because again, I guess it's not that bad. I have to go through like each thing. Maybe it's not too bad. It's just the not being able to debug it properly. But I guess most of these teams, what they do, they're just really used to it, right? And they know um how it needs to be constructed, what an interface looks like on UDL, how to call functions,
Mm.
and I guess that just makes it easier for them, the experience itself of just using it and knowing how to map that correctly, right? So I'm guessing that within time we should get better at this.
The other point with that does give benefit to the proc macros is that if you change the code, since it's generating via the proc macro, means you don't have to update the UDL file. Like if you change the code, you have to update the
Hmm.
UDL file. If you change the
Yeah.
code but keep the proc macros, you should theoretically not need to update the Unify wrapper. Um,
Hmm.
it's
Yep.
possible if you like import a new type and include that in the new structure and it causes other problems that you might need to, but it does cut down on the amount that you may need to maintain the amount of effort required to maintain the wrapper.
Right. Right. That's a really good point.
Just
Um,
quick thing for us to look at for a second. I just sent a couple links in Zoom. Oh, no one's sharing screen anymore.
Let's see. The JSON 30 JSON value. That's a custom type, right? I'm guessing.
Yeah, so it seems like they've defined this custom type in here, right?
Hmm.
And they're just saying there's some custom type. Don't worry, we handle it. And then down here they're saying, oh, this function returns this custom type. And then in the lib, they define the custom type. So they're saying JSON value, it's actually a 30 JSON.
Mm.
And then this seems to be all they need to do. They write this like custom type converter. Um, and so I think it's going to be switching between a string and this. Uh,
Mm. Okay.
uh, that's what
so
you want,
yeah, so I
I
think from the
think.
Kotlin point of view, you got to pass in a string. Um, Kotlin or Swift point of view, you got to pass in a JSON string. But then from the Rust point of view, it's still a respected JSON value.
That's exactly
Okay.
what you want because it means that Rust is still Rust and happy with the types and stuff, but then
Mm,
we don't have to have a separate function. It converts it at the unify point in time, not us adding additional functions and stuff.
yep, yep, and
Yeah.
yeah, it looks like this like takes a result as well, so you can make it, make it safe.
Gotcha. Yeah. I'll explore definitely that part then.
Cool. Yeah, I need to explore that too. Currently, I have like a unified defined version of a JSON element, which is very ugly.
Um, one of the other, I don't like it, but I figure I'll mention it. One of the other things that we could potentially consider in the future would be if we're having significant issues with Unify, we could do Rust to C and then uh, C to Kotlin and Swift, similar like how the Indie crate was set up. Uh, it's not my favorite because now we actually have two wrappers for Android and iOS. The only other benefit there, though, is that the C to React Native is going to be a thing that we will likely want to do in the future here, anyways. So um, I think that's a plan F as an option, just to voice the option,
Yeah, no, it scares me, but you're right. We need options.
Yeah, I've thought of that also, James. So yeah.
Cool. That's some pretty good discussion on the UDL stuff. I think that gives you a pretty good direction or actually a couple of directions to look in, Alberto. Were there any
Yep.
other issues there you wanted to discuss?
No, I think I'm good with the information you guys gave me. I think I'll try these custom fields and see if I can get it to work and get something more more proper so it suffices both Unify and Rust.
Awesome.
Cool.
Sweet. Any other things we want to discuss today?
All good if not, but is there any update on the framework you guys could share? Not really?
Yeah, I've been hacking away at that. I expect here in the next couple of days I should be able to share the initial step of being able to do the um, invitation handling and then connect to via exchange to another agent and be able to communicate through that, because that hits the major points of um, transport, message handling, and packing and receiving, message creation, storage management, and um, all of those big pieces. That should put us in a position to move on to the other um, protocols, which I think should be theoretically faster to implement because they will be a lot of the core pieces. Like I can use the same storage implementation for both issue credential as well as did exchange, for instance, and I don't have to re-implement the message sending and whatnot. So making headway there, and I should be able to share an update on Discord here soon. I wanted to today, but I ran into some blockers over the weekend, so um, making headway.
Cool. Yeah, it's exciting. Yeah, a lot goes into establishing that first connection.
Definitely.
And
Um,
it'll be good as well, to write an agent and not have to worry about V1 of issue credential and present proof,
right.
assuming you're going straight to V2.
Yes, that is my plan. Like I'm not considering the connections protocol, for instance. I
Yeah.
like ban and exchange only. uh, well, I'm presently not taking into scope what it looks like to handle multiple, for instance, connections protocols and multiple issuance protocols and whatnot. Because I think it's too large in scope architecturally to try and like optimize for that from the get-go.
Mhm.
Um, it's similar to like trying to optimize for uh, DIGCOM v3 when we haven't even done we have it's a little bit too large in scope. I would rather say, okay, let's do this, and then we'll make adjustments for the try and make it multi-protocol support in the future. You know.
Yeah. Cool.
And like I
Just out of curiosity, are you using a mediator
started with
to?
just V1 and then trying to add to V2 in the future. You know.
Cool. Out of curiosity, James, are you using like a mediator to get these messages from agent to agent?
I'm starting with the assumption that you are both on a public IP address,
Okay.
and then it will be the next step to do mediated connections.
Yep.
I don't actually anticipate the mediated connections to be too challenging. They've always been problematic, but I
Yes.
think that the
Yeah. Be
hard,
careful.
right, right. I think that fortunately, at least, there's already some of the like the protocols already defined and everything. It's the coordinating pieces that need to be written of like, okay, let's connect to the mediator. Okay, now let's actually request mediation. Now let's add keys for it to um, actually listen for, and okay, now let's go pick up messages. Those are the pieces that are not written. So yeah, but yeah, that's step two, because I think that if we can do public IP address to another public IP address, I think that's a pretty good first step, you know.
Mhm.
So
Cool.
that's a long-winded way of saying uh yes, we'll be getting there, not immediately though.
Yes. No, no, all good. All good. And I mean, the public IP approach will be good for any server consumers as well, I suppose.
Exactly, exactly.
Cool.
Awesome. I think that probably is going to do it for today's call. Some really good discussion um, on both the Aries-vcx move to OWF proposal and on UDLs and whatnot. So looking forward to future discussions and the coming work, and excited about the future. So thank you for coming and talking today, and we'll chat with you at least in another 2 weeks. Thank you.
Cool.
All right,
Thanks,
sounds
guys.
good.
Thanks for the work.
Thank you.
Have a
Bye.
nice day.